Alright, so welcome back to another video. Here, creating an e-commerce with Vue for building user interface on the web browser, Nuxt to streamline the entire web development, Strapi to store the state of application outside of our server, and we can easily manage our content, GraphQL to reduce the load time or the page load time and for improvement. So GraphQL solved two main issues: underfetching and overfetching. So underfetching means that we lose additional time querying our server for multiple collections, which that impact the page load time. And overfetching is that the server sends an unnecessary amount of data that we need to filter out on the client most of the time. This is what happened when we use RESTful architectures. And GraphQL solves those issues by having one single entry point and improve the performance overall in our application. So Docker, we can containerize our app and deploy anywhere. All right, that's great, cool. And then we have Stripe to integrate is payment options in our web app, in our e-commerce particularly. So okay, so the goal of this is to see how feasible, fast, and maintainable is to build e-commerce with all of this technology, and also how scalable it is, and launch that in a EC2 Amazon instance. Okay, so this is the methodology I'm going to do here. So we have the design, build, test, and deploy. Okay, so first I went over the design. Here we conducted research to see if Nuxt provide a template so we can speed up the development process of building our own visual design system. Luckily for us, we this Vue stick that allow to do that. Vue 3 there are some developers that actually made these components, the UI component system for us. Unfortunately, because Nuxt is on or these Nuxt templates are on a beta, we're not going to use that. Strapi, luckily for us, has a integration with Nuxt 3 models. Okay, and then we have Stripe, right? Cool. Using car integration. So the time estimated for that is 24 hours. So far, we have dedicated is 2 hours and a half, 3 hours specifically, to set up the Strapi, define common e-commerce data structure, and the most time consuming was populate with mock data, right? So let me add this. Come on, man. Okay, because this is white. No, I just want this to be black. Wait, what? Okay. What about now? Time consuming. Off. So this is black. We don't want anything here. This is time consuming. So populate with mock data is time consuming. It's a time consuming operation. Okay. And then here I'm going to use Strapi with GraphQL. Okay, this is what I'm going to do today. All right, and GraphQL with Strapi. Okay, Strapi. Doc Strapi. That's right. Cool. So because we're not going to use REST API, this architectural design, the application programmable interface, okay, we're going to GraphQL, again, a new way of how do we interact with the front end and the back end. So the GraphQL API allows performing queries and mutations to interact with the content types through Strapi GraphQL plugin. Results can be filtered, sorted, and paginated. Okay, so prerequisite to use the GraphQL API, install the GraphQL plugin. Okay, so let's see how can we install that. So this is the use configuration Shadow CRUD. Shadow CRUD. All right, create, read, update, and delete. This is the most common operation we perform to a database. Customization, disabling operations in CRUD using getters, using getters, extending the schema, custom configuration for resolvers, authorizations configurations, policy, middlewares, usage with the users and permission plugin, registrations, and authentication. And the API tokens. Okay, first, by default, Strapi create REST endpoint for each of your content. So first, let me go to this. Okay, so use Strapi with GraphQL. Okay, this is another section. Is here. Exactly. So use Strapi with GraphQL. Okay, so by default, Strapi create REST endpoints for each of your content types. The GraphQL API reference describes query mutations and parameters that you can use to interact with your API using Strapi GraphQL plugin. So to get started with GraphQL in your application, please install the plugin first. To do that, open your terminal and run the following command: npm run Strapi and install GraphQL. Interesting. So npm run Strapi. If you look at this, so npm run Strapi and install GraphQL. Okay, interesting. So Strapi, after all, is a CLI utility. Okay, Strapi, after all, it seems that it's a utility. So if I take a closer look at this, like Strapi, right? So Strapi. Strapi command line. Well, let me go direct to the docs so I make myself familiar with this, which is the docs here. Okay, and if I want to search here, let's see the Strapi CMD command. Strapi plugin, Strapi server, or commands, bagging, migrations, Strapi 3, Strapi 4. So this is code migration for that. Okay, package name is Strapi version 4, Strapi database, Strapi admins, utils and helpful plugins, user permissions, internationalizations, upload, documentations, GraphQL, email, plugins entry, content type builder. Okay, upload AWS S3. Great, that's right, and there you go. But I think because we closed our server, oh my god, that's not good enough. Oh npm run develop. Hmm. It's because we have to go to our server. npm run develop. In theory, but because oh my god, because I turned off the computer, all of that data has been lost. Yeah, because all of that data has been lost. Admin. Yeah, all of that data has been lost. Oh crap. All of the data has been, oh crap. So if I navigate here to the content manager, okay, that's great, great. Okay, it persists that's awesome. Okay, so it persists our data on disk. Great, great, cool, cool, cool. Thanks for that, my friend. Oh, wholeheartedly, wholeheartedly, wholeheartedly. Yeah, thanks for that, man. Okay, cool. I just want to look at the cmd command. No, you don't have the cmd commands. What about Strapi command? Strapi. From migrations, installations running Strapi. No Docker, no, getting Strapi. Okay, I just want to look at the command line interface, exactly. The CLI. Yes. So Strapi comes with a full-featured command line interface, which lets you scaffold and manage your projects in seconds. The CLI works with both the Yarn and npm package manager. Interactive commands such as Strapi admin create user don't display prompt with npm. A fix for the npm package manager is anticipated by 2023. In the meantime, consider using Yarn package manager. Interactive commands such as Strapi admin create user don't display prompt with npm. It is recommended to install Strapi locally only, which require prefixing all the following Strapi command with the package manager use of the project for the project setup. To pass option with npm, use the syntax npm run Strapi command options. To pass option with Yarn, use the syntax. Okay, but I feel that's what it's doing. It's passing command. It's passing options. This command is passing options to the Strapi CLI, this command line interface. Okay, that's great, because now we're telling us, hey, let's go to install this GraphQL query, this GraphQL plugin in Stripe. Then start your app and open your browser. Here you should now be able to access the GraphQL playground that will help you to write your GraphQL queries and mutations. That's right, that's right, that's exactly what I want. Okay, exactly. You're telling Strapi, hey, you're telling to the CLI command Strapi, hey, I just want you to install the GraphQL, okay, package. Rebuilding the admin UI, that's right. And now, as we can see here, we have now if the config temporal files like the database data.db, thanks for that, and catch. So for the admin here, in configurations, the hooks page and permissions. Okay, so behind the scenes, all right, it installed GraphQL plugin. Then start your app and open your browser on here, and you should be able to access the GraphQL playground. Now, let's say, hey, npm run, npm run develop. Okay. So Strapi recognized this command, and now here's time to bundle in all of this code and launch a couple. Oh, come on, man. Launch a couple URL so we can sign here, right? So we can access to the GraphQL query like this. So now with this GraphQL, all right, we should have access to this. But it's funny because this exactly the schemas, scalar JSON, datetime, upload, paginations, response collections, mutation, a response collection data, like the paginations, publication state, input, ID filter input, boolean filter input, string filter input, in filter input, floating. So it comes with a bunch of pre-configured types. So the GraphQL playground is enabled by default for both the development and staging environment, but disabled in production environment. Set the playground always configuration options to true to enable the GraphQL playground in production environments. No. Okay, configuration. Plugins configurations are defined in the config plugin.js. So if I navigate to the command here to our code, okay, so config on the plugin, but I don't see any is config, but I don't see any plugin here. I don't see any plugin like this. Okay, go to Strapi here. Plugins configurations are defined in the config plugin.js file. This configuration file can be included in a graphql.config objects to define specific configuration for the GraphQL plugin. You see the plugin configuration documentation. The funny thing is, we don't have any of that. Okay, we don't have any of that. But it tells us, after all, you install is a Apollo for that. You install an Apollo server. You're not installing is GraphQL only. You're installing is an Apollo. And Apollo is a GraphQL implementations that allow us is to work with the data layer between the your mother web applications and the cloud, right? So specifically, Apollo server provides a couple features like setting an Apollo or setting a GraphQL server and a allow us to set up subscription as well, which is much like the push notification. So Apollo server options can be set with the GraphQL config Apollo server configuration options. And again, recap here, plugin configurations are defined in the config plugin.js file. And this configuration file can include a GraphQL.config. But the funny thing here is that there is no thing like that. So even though that I installed that, auth IP token, transfer token, so even though that I did that, okay, I don't see any file that, unless we have to create that file, you know, exactly, unless we have to create that file. Plugin configuration are stored in the ./config/plugin.js. See prior structures. Each plugin can be configured with the following available parameters: enable, config, and resolve. Configurations are optional or used to override default plugin configurations defined in Strapi server.js. And optional, only required for local plugins. Path to the plugins folder. You can use JavaScript or TypeScript. Question is, because our entire code is using that, GraphQL plugin, GraphQL config, an Apollo server artifacts, default limit endpoint generate artifacts. Okay. Playgrounds always false, default limit 10, max limit 10, Apollo server tracing true. A very simple okay, a very simple configuration. All right, cool. So now let's go with Visual Studio Code. Why doesn't appear this? Okay. Okay, that's right. Cool. Okay, so here let's going to create is something called the plugin.js. Okay, and let's going to export that model. Okay, so here is the model.export in plural, okay, is equal to this function that we're going to export here, which will contain is this, right? An object where here we have is the GraphQL options, right? With the GraphQL options. Okay, what about for this? Nope. Playground always false. That's right. Default limit, max limit, and Apollo servers to true. Okay. The server is restarting. Okay. So if I reload this, that's right. So if I set this to false, for example, okay, and then I navigate to the browser, GraphQL, to the browser GraphQL playground, exactly. I should be able to use that. So this actually works. Okay, cool, cool. Let's now enable that. Okay, reload the page, and we can have access to our GraphQL playground. Cool, cool. So here what I'm doing is just looking at the entire schema here. Okay, meaning the GraphQL server capabilities. All right. All the types and capability that we can have access to. All right. And here, if we can see here, we can look at the order input and order, and it comes with additional properties like when it was created, updated, or published, localization like filter, pagination, source, publication states. Okay. In order entity response collection, and all of this. And our product, right? So since our product, which is a complex data structure here, we have names, descriptions, review, which is a relationship with review relationship response collection, something that is generated by Strapi, price image, again, something that is generated by Strapi, okay, upload file relationship response collections, categories, something that I define, and some of the metadata, like create ad, update ad, publish ad, localizations here. Okay, you have filters, paginations, or publication states, locale string. And yeah, that's exactly what I want to do here. User permissions and role. Let me keep reading about the let me keep reading the GraphQL plugin. Okay, because after all, it runs a Apollo server, and yes, as I mentioned, Apollo server comes with it creates a GraphQL server and implement other features like subscription, okay, which is part of the root operations type from a GraphQL server. So in there you have is the queries, the mutations, and subscriptions. And subscriptions, behave much like the push notifications. Cool. So Apollo server options can be set with the GraphQL config.apollo server configuration objects. Exactly. Apollo server option can be used, for instance, to enable tracing feature, which is something that I'm not quite familiar with. Okay, so federated trace data. Interesting. One of the many benefits of using GraphQL is using GraphQL as an API layer is that it enables fine-grained tracing or usage report. Operation metrics in GraphOS. This is from GraphOS. Viewing metrics. You can visualize operation metrics in Apollo Studio from any various operation page. Request rate, require resolvers level trace. Interesting. Okay, interesting. Of every API call. The Apollo platform supports consuming and aggregating this trace to provide detailed insight into your GraphQL layer performance and use. Exactly. So one of the main benefits of using GraphQL as an API layer is that it enables fine-grained tracing of every API call, meaning usage reporting. Fine-grained tracing or user report. Usage reporting. So the Apollo platform supports consuming and aggregating these traits to provide detailed insight into your GraphQL layer performance and use. So the tracing is to get fine-grained usage reporting. Apollo Federation supports sending federated traits from your graph router, which are construction for timing and error information provided by the subgraph. These federated traits capture the subgraph level details in the shape of the query plan, which is sent to Apollo metrics ingress by default and aggregated into query level status and field level stats. The overall flow of the federated trace is as follows. But this is very specific to the federated trace, to their Apollo advanced features. To their Apollo advanced features. Okay. So when I look here at the tracing feature, aka usage reporting, which is supported by GraphQL Playground to track the response time for each part of your query. From Apollo Server version 3.9, default cache option is cache bounded. You can change this to Apollo Server configurations. The maximum number of items returned by the response is limited to 100 by default. To 100 by default. Default limit. And this is amount limit. This value can be changed using the amount limit. But should only be changed after careful consideration. A large query can cause denial of service and may cause abnormal load on your Strapi server. As well as your database server. And may cause a normal load on your Strapi server as well as your database server. So this is something that you have to be careful. You're going to serve data. Okay. So you have Shadow CRUD to simplify and automate the build of the GraphQL schema. We introduced the Shadow CRUD feature. It automatically generates the type definition, queries, mutation, and resolvers based on your model. Example, if you generate an API call document using the interactive Strapi generate CLI. Okay. Or the administration panel, your model look like this. If you take a closer look at this, source API content type. So let me take a closer look at that. Okay, which is looking at the package.json. Okay, in on the source API for our product. Okay, and we navigate to content types, schema. That's right. So this create is a model that looks like this. This create this model. Okay, kind, collection time, collection name, product options, plugin options, attributes. And here's where you can see the attribute name, description, reviews, price, image, category, a very simple one, and also it is relationship. Cool. So when I look at the generate GraphQL types and queries, meaning, let me go back to the Strapi docs here, the generate GraphQL types and query from this example. Okay, and to generate a document, okay, that contains the name, descriptions, and log. So it generates this document filter input. Okay, it generates filter options input. It generates the document here, document entity. Okay, document entity response. Document entity response collection. Document relation response collection. Document relation response collection. And queries to retrieve one of our multiple restaurants. Documents and documents and mutations. So if I navigate to the playground here, okay, and if I say, hey, just wants to look at the, what about this? Just wants to look at the query type. Let's look at the type query, okay, which is one of our root operations. Here we can see upload files, upload folders, internationalization using permissions, categories, orders, items, and products. So we can make query to products and to get one single product. That's right. By passing some arguments here or parameterize queries. And also with the local, okay, cool. That's right. And the mutations. Create upload. So let's go with the mutations here, especially for product. And if you can see here is this. Okay, so create products, update product, delete product. And this is again the CRUD operation, which is the most common operation that we do to a database: create, read, update, and delete. Mutations here it only defined as the create, update, and delete, and the read operations is defined on the query, which is this, especially from products. So You can look all of the products or a single product. Okay, good, good, very, very, very good. Now, okay, so if I look at this, this is the customizations that we can do here. Yeah, in customizations, Stripe provides a programmatic API to customize GraphQL, which allows disabling some operations for the Shadow CRUD, using getters to return information about allow operations. Okay. Stripe provides a programmatic API to customize GraphQL, which allow disable some operations for the Shadow CRUD, and the Shadow CRUD is to simplify and automate the build of the GraphQL schema. We introduce a Shadow CRUD feature. It automatically generates the type definition, query, mutations, and resolvers based on your model. Okay, so the Shadow CRUD, cool. It's a cool feature, by the way. So it automatically generates type definitions, query, mutations, and resolvers. If you remember resolvers, well, they are functions that determine the value of a property from a GraphQL query or mutation or resolver or subscription. Okay, the disabling some operations for the Shadow using getters to return information about allowed operations, registering and using an extension objects to extend the existing schema. Okay, an example of GraphQL customizations. Disabling operation in the Shadow CRUD. Okay, but this is, yes, Strapi provide the programmatic API to customize GraphQL, which allows disabling some operations for the Shadow CRUD, using getters to return information about allow operations, registering and using an extension object to extend the existing schema. An example of GraphQL customization. On your index, where you register that here, okay. So, is this true? An asynchronous register function that runs before your application is initialized. Perfect. This gives you an opportunity to extend code. Count extension service. Strapi.plugin GraphQL.service extension. Extension service. Nexus. GraphQL SDL and type definitions. Okay. GraphQL SDL, type definitions, time article, name stream, and resolvers. Query address to resolve that. Return value city Montpellier. Resolvers config. Query.address of false. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Because with this customization, you can disable some operation of the Shadow CRUD. Disable some operation of the Shadow CRUD using getters to return information about allow operations. Using getters to return information about allow operations. Using getters is enabled, is disabled. The following getter can be used to retrieve information about operations allow on content type. Is enabled, disabled, our query is enabled. using getters to retrieve information about operations allow. To retrieve information about operations allow. Okay. To retrieve information about operations allow. Okay, using getters to return information about allow operations. Registering and using an extension object to extend the existing schema. Extends type or define custom resolvers, policy, and middlewares. Define types. Define custom extend types. So extend the capability of the server. Define custom resolvers like this. Define custom resolvers, policy, and middleware. Policies and middleware. Interesting. Interesting. Using getters, extending the schema, type def. And authorization configuration. Okay, the authorization for GraphQL is handled by request authorization Strapi. Authorization with users and permission plugin. With the user permission plugin, a GraphQL request is allowed if the appropriate permissions are given. For instance, if a category content type exists and is queried through GraphQL with the query.category handler, the request is allowed if the appropriate find permission for the category content type is given. To query a single category, which is done with the query category handler, the request is allowed if the find one permission is given. Example of authorization configurations. This is authorization with the user and permission plugin. Example of authorizations configurations. And the resolver config extension service. Use exactly. Extend this as a middleware. Resolver config, query category, query restaurant. Can be applied to the resolvers through the resolvers config and policies. Use it with users and permissions plugin that allow protecting the API with a full authentication process. You should see a new user in the create a user collection type in your Strapi admin panel. To perform authorization requests, you must first get the GWT. Okay, so the following is the GWT authorization and API tokens. To use API tokens for authentication, pass the token in the authorization header using the format bearer your API token. Okay. So you use Strapi GraphQL. Actually, this is done. Okay. Is this. So use Strapi with GraphQL is actually done. There is no need to install Apollo server because that plugin already installed that, and you can pass some object to configure it behind the scenes. Cool, awesome. And there is no need to define basic resolvers, because one of the cool things of this, okay, is that Strapi, oh, come on, oh my god, none. That's right, because this is the text is in white. That's right. So use Strapi with GraphQL. The GraphQL plugin comes with an Apollo server and something called and something called the GraphQL plugin comes with an Apollo server and something called Shadow CRUD to automate the creation of very powerful. Okay, so it saves a huge amount of time, so we don't need to set type definitions queries like this. So the Shadow CRUD is called Shadow CRUD to automate the creation of types definition queries, mutations, and resolvers based on models defined in holy crap based on models defined in the admin panel. That's actually great. That's actually awesome, by the way. Totally awesome. So that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.